Welcome to my kitchen. Just in time for Cinco de Mayo, I wanted to get ahead of your bean intake and help you avoid the gas and gastrointestinal distress that they, as well as pastas and flours made from them, can cause. In the last 50 years, more people have been experiencing diseases like Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis, and psoriasis, which were rarely seen before. Although there are medicines to treat these diseases, we aren't paying enough attention to the main reasons certain foods containing many lectins may be causing the issue. The reason? We simply don't cook like our grandmas used to. Our modern preparation consists typically of opening a can, opening a box, and not knowing what the manufacturer's done beforehand. This increases our problems with lectins, whether it's just because we're not soaking our beans overnight like we used to, or because we're just using convenience food. We're poised for the dreaded song to be true. Beans, beans, the musical fruit. The more you eat, the more you... Scusi! When you prepare beans or similar foods, it's best to soak them for a long time before cooking them. One factor that can increase the release of lectins is cooking foods slowly. For example, if you slow cook beans or chili, they'll release more lectins than if you soak them first and then cook them at a higher temperature. It's best to soak them for at least 6 hours and bring them to a boil, then cook them to reduce the amount of lectins released. One young man I worked with had a health journey which led him to uncover some interesting facts about lectins. These plant proteins, primarily utilized as a secret defense mechanism, can be problematic, particularly when dealing with a compromised gut lining, as he found. Whenever he would consume high lectin foods, either beans or cashews, and surprisingly even coffee, he inevitably found himself contending with mild yet persistent symptoms reminiscent of leaky gut syndrome. His personal journey with lectins underscores just how crucial it is to comprehend their role in our health and to make well-informed decisions. By acknowledging and addressing the lectin sensitivity we may have, we can take proactive steps to protect ourselves against chronic diseases and foster optimal well-being. The symptoms of being sensitive to lectins can also include feeling anxious or depressed, experiencing joint issues, digestion problems, or even diabetes and autoimmune diseases. They can even be related to mental issues such as cognitive difficulties and brain diseases. In fact, many causes of food poisoning in the United States, especially with beans, are caused by the lectins. Other foods that contain many lectins are vegetables from the nightshade family, such as eggplants, peppers, potatoes, and tomatoes. There are also squash varieties like zucchinis, butternut squash, and pumpkin. And grains like rice, barley, and wheat have many lectins. In fact, if you've ever met someone who feels unwell after eating wheat, it could be because they have a gluten sensitivity. Gluten is one of the most well-known lectins and is present in wheat. You can try peeling and even removing the seeds from foods like nightshades, beans, and squash. Most of the lectins in these foods are in the seeds and the peels, so make sure to discard them. Pressure cooking is another good way to eliminate some lectins in certain foods, but not all of them. It's especially helpful for beans, as it reduces the phytohemagglutinin, a substance very toxic to humans. Just remember that pressure cooking doesn't eliminate lectins in wheat and grains the same way it does in beans. So making a lasagna in a pressure cooker with regular noodles is not going to be a safe option. Many grains can cause autoimmune diseases and increased intestinal permeability. If we talk about seeds in general, all grains and legumes are a type of seeds. From a logical standpoint, think about why nature created seeds: to protect themselves from predators. That's why it's important for vegetarians to properly cook or ferment beans and legumes, or even sprout and soak them, because they eat a lot of them. This helps reduce lectins, which can be a problem for many people. The reason why some people have more problems with lectins than others has to do with their microbiome, or the bacteria and fungi in their gut. If you don't have a good balance there, you're likely to be more sensitive to lectins. This can happen after taking antibiotics or consuming genetically modified foods containing glyphosate, which can really disrupt the gut. But when lectins come into play, they cause molecules to bind together. This basically mows down your intestinal villi because they're like bowling balls in your intestines. Those finger-like projections, the villi, in your intestinal wall end up being affected because instead of having a wide surface area to absorb nutrients, you're left with a flat surface. This is where lectins cause problems and gain a bad reputation. Furthermore, once the villi are damaged, inflammation occurs, and that inflammation leads to the production of antibodies, triggering a series of other problems in the intestinal tract. But it gets even more complicated. Since you've caused damage, trauma, and inflammation, you've created the possibility of those lectins getting into the bloodstream through what's known as a leaky gut. Lectins are substances that have strong affinity for certain receptors in our body, such as insulin and leptin, that's Leptin receptors. This is important because it can lead to problems like diabetes or insulin resistance, affecting how our body handles blood sugar. They can also cause leptin resistance, which is a hormone that controls our metabolism. This has me wondering if the reason that Hispanics seem to have more problems than Anglos with diabetes could be the fact that they eat predominantly more beans because they're consumed in most Latin American countries. It's possible because the use of canned or processed beans are more commonplace now that we're consuming more lectins than we used to. Are you making your beans like Grandma used to? Lectins are present in about 30% of the food we eat, and they're helpful for our cells to communicate. However, why are they sometimes considered bad? Well, they're only harmful if you consume them in large quantities. It's important to consume them in moderation, as a small amount can be beneficial. They can activate a system called the complementary immune system, which helps us fight diseases and stay healthy. But remember, everything in moderation. And don't forget about cashews and peanuts. You caught me in the middle of making my cashew milk and English muffins for breakfast. I had already soaked my cashews overnight before rinsing them and putting them in the blender. The soaking serves the dual purpose of softening the cashews so that they're easy to liquefy, but it also removes the lectins from them. Later I'll strain the mixture through a cheesecloth into a container and enjoy this creamy and nutritious milk substitute. I take advantage of the leftover meal and use it as a nut flour of sorts. I find that cashew meal has a great consistency for English muffins. Genetic modifications to our wheat are quite common. Even in Europe, it's easier to harvest the short stalk wheat than tall stalk wheat, as it tends to break easily. Most of the wheat grown in places like in Italy or Ukraine is basically the same variety as ours, but here we use glyphosate to spray almost all of our grains. As a desiccant, glyphosate used to be used on genetically modified crops, but now it's more efficient to dry the crop for easy harvesting, especially because transporting water is expensive. So industrial farms spray their crops with glyphosate to ensure that they can harvest them on time. As a result, our foods are loaded with glyphosate, while in Europe it's not allowed at all. Eating organic and non-GMO can also go a long way in keeping our gut-brain axis healthy. Remember, everything that can affect our gut affects